This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 364, September 4th, 2018 edition. The worst day of the year edition, as I like to call it. Always difficult. Last weekend at Saratoga, Del Mar, typically difficult psychologically for the horse player. And then the big crash on the Tuesday seems almost inevitable. But I'm here, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you from the Brooklyn bunker. Joined, he'll be in the New York area soon, but I think he's currently on Planet Texas. It's hard to keep track. My co-host, the People's Champ, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
What's going on? I'm feeling a little bit jazzy today, so you better don't get me going because I got punches. I'm ready to kinds of directions.
I like it. Why are you all jacked up? What's happening?
It's just like people are so annoying.
This again.
Well, they are. Well, first of all, I want to say that I did get some really nice comments. I didn't tell you. I got some really nice comments just about how, like, some amens about our conversation about Twitter and etiquette and things like that. And
I heard some nice things too. I heard some very nice things too. People. That's the funny thing is I think that like 90% of the world feels like, maybe more than 90% feels like we feel. And that's part of why I have my attitude I do about it of why give power to the clowns by even talking about them. But clearly you want to, so go ahead.
First of all, there's been some chirps from the basement. And look, time out. Let me explain something. Let me explain a couple things. First of all, I have never said I'm an expert. I am a person who enjoys the sport. I have an opinion, and occasionally people want to hear it. That's what it amounts to. I'm wrong more than I'm right, but I enjoy the game. I have fun, and I'm a winning horse player. So let me be clear about that. Second of all, I'm not a professional horse player. There is a time in the last 3 or 4 years where I have been required on my tax returns to have like real estate / professional gambler, but it doesn't feed my family. So let me get that part out of the way as well. The second part is I don't understand why it's why there's any criticism for the idea that like I just wanted to I wanted to take a little bit of a step back. Like why that's so crazy that like we play this game 5 days a week, 40 weeks out of the year. And for a couple of weeks when things aren't going well, just take a step back. And it's funny to me that like, that's like problematic to some people. I don't understand that. I just don't get it.
I don't even like talking about this, but since you brought it up, it's also just incorrect. There was some clown who said something about, oh, no professional player would ever take a break. Patently untrue. I'm friends with several of them who've all told me that they will take a break and they often come back refreshed and doing better. So even if this person has the accolades that he claims, whatever, I'm getting so bored even talking about this loser that I'm about to fall asleep on my keyboard. But even if that's true for him, it's not true in the wider world. So anyway, can we please talk about Yoshida, JK? The great Yoshida, the podcast darling. We talked about him, his second start ever in this world, and he goes and wins the Grade 1 Woodward. It looked great. I loved it. I loved also being wrong about, I kept talking about how, I think he should go to the lead. No, he had the perfect trip. He came back. He had so much dirt on him. I thought he was great for a second. This is a tough horse. This is a racehorse. Narrative came out about the previous race, too, that apparently he had caught a clod in the eye somewhere in there, and that was came back one-eyed, basically, and that was a big part of the reason for the no fire there. Makes it a little bit easier to excuse. I think based on the way the horse came back and ran in the Woodward, that this is a case where the narrative is correct. What did you make of this performance? I was whooping and hollering. Almost as happy as I was when Catholic Boy won the Travers.
It's always fun when a horse that you have a special place in your heart for does well, and Yoshida is one of those. We were very excited about him and his performance when he broke his maiden at Keeneland, going 2 turns on the front end, and I feel like I've picked him in almost every race that we've talked about on the show since then, just because I think he's just a really talented horse. I was excited that they finally got him on the dirt to give it a try. And congratulations to WinStar and China Horse Club and the group and Bill Mott and Joel Rosario. The ride was great, and it was all great and happy. However, I don't think I want to bet the horse moving forward. I don't think that this was the greatest running of the Woodward. I do think that he is a useful type that will win more races on dirt, and I'd love to see him come back for his 5-year-old year. Is that right? Yeah, 5-year-old year next year, and be able to do some really cool and fun dynamic things with him, running him in all kinds of different spots. I'm still going to stick by my guns that I believe that this horse could be more dangerous and more potent on the front end. He's tactical enough. He's shown that, and he's got a great turn of foot and stamina. I think he's a really fun horse, and I'd love to own him. But at the same time, I don't envision myself betting this horse moving forward in another Grade 1 race with a little bit more of a quality field that he'd have to deal with.
It was a 102 Beyer speed figure, the impressive number to be sure, but nothing that's going to make you run for the window to bet him in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. I have to agree with that. I think it's worth pausing for a second about one of the amazing things that this does for this horse and his owners is how it opens up his potential value going forward, given his pedigree by Heart's Cry, out of Hilda's Passion, the Grade 1 winner on the dirt, now a Grade 1 winner on both surfaces, some sexy international pizzazz, beaten less than 2 in a race like the Queen Anne. You got to figure his value, just thinking about him in terms of his potential, the future career, that his value just went through the roof, did it not?
Absolutely. Imagine the freshman sire. I mean, like I said, I would imagine he'll stick. I would hope he'll stick around. I haven't read anything that he will or will not after this year. And we still haven't heard any confirmations about the Justify situation. Either way, would be a lot of fun to see the freshman roster that WinStar could potentially have with the versatility of the Scat Daddy Justify situation, and tag team that with the versatility of the Yoshida and the turf and the dirt situation there. That could be a really fun little back and forth they could do with those 2 horses.
Yes, I have a feeling that will not come to play in that particular shed row, but it would certainly be interesting to dream on for a little bit. I wonder if Yoshida's value now isn't such where a 5-year-old career is where he's too valuable in his future for that to become a reality. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it. Again, we always say when it comes to the breeding industry, we know just enough to get ourselves into trouble. I'd be just curious to see how much that potential exciting cross bloodline is worth, especially with the impressive resume this horse has put together. I'm with you, though. I'd love to see what he could do going forward as a racehorse. I just wonder if his value isn't more at this point as something other than a racehorse.
No, I don't disagree. Do you think that there's another? And now that you say it out loud, I guess selfishly as a racing fan, I'd love to see him back. But I'm really not sure that there's anything more he can do to add value other than winning a Breeders' Cup. I don't think that, if he wins a Grade 1 at a mile on the turf next year, or he wins another Grade 1 on the dirt next year, what does it really do for him in terms of value?
Money as a stallion, I don't think it does. I think he's pretty much where you'd ever dream of him to be, I think. But, hey, you get purse every time these horses win and just life experiences. Why couldn't he go back to Ascot and win a race? It's probably not going to happen because of where the economic factors behind all this stuff. But it's not it's not nuts to think that because of the other things he could bring in terms of cash and life experiences that he'd stay.
No, and the other thing is, like you mentioned, the speculation that we're going to that WinStar is going to send Justify elsewhere. that would be a great opportunity for them to kind of have a, the kind of the B team version of Justify, the turf bred with the kind of the versatility inside of the pedigree and the racetrack performance that could really help make him a attractive sire.
I hope you got to watch the whole festivities on Saturday. Our friend of the podcast, Sean Tugel, just grinning ear to ear in that winner's circle photo. We were pleased to have him at the paddock bar tables during the day. And in fact, JK, he has promised, he took issue with something you said on an earlier podcast. I'm giving you a heads up. We'll be hearing from him later in the week, probably in a pre-recorded spot where he had something to say. He had something to say to you about his participation at the secret spot earlier in the meet. Just be warned, Sean Tugel. He's got you in the crosshairs.
We gotta watch out for him.
So how do you want to spend the rest of the show? We can talk about racing and our great friends who've actually accomplished something in this industry like Sean Tugel, or we can talk about some of your basement buddies some more.
No, let's just blast through these races, and like there's a lot of them. A lot of things happened between Saturday, Sunday, and then also yesterday. And then we can save the riffraff for late.
I was hoping you'd take the hint that I don't want to talk about the riffraff anymore.
No, I don't think we'll run out of time. I don't know. You want to go back to the Saranac and start there and work that way?
Let's stick with the grade one, the other grade one from Saratoga. We'll get to the Saranac, but let's stick with the other grade one from Saratoga. Sippican Harbor gets the job done. 77 Beyer speed figure. This was one, JK, that I have to say, as they crossed the wire, I was just like, hey, this is not a horse I'm ever going to have in a million years. And I went back and looked at the racing form some more and was fairly perturbed at myself for not at least having as a C. And I'll if you don't already know, I'll tell you why. But first, let's hear your thoughts on Sippican Harbor and the impressive win in the Grade 1 spin-away at Saratoga on Saturday.
I don't think I could have had the horse. I'm interested to hear what you had to say. I didn't think it was like an unbelievable betting opportunity in this race. I felt like chasing yesterday, just based off the figure and the Baffert factor, was a likely winner. And I still think she's really talented. I think if you watch the race in HD, I watched it actually on the NBC broadcast. She was climbing the entire time. She was retreating the entire time. She hated the kickback. And then when she finally kind of produced herself, she made a small little run, and then just, it was just too much to ask of her. And, and as a small side note, and I know we'll get back to the race for a second, but the track that day, I know it was fast and I know the weather had been fine, but I was hanging out with someone who's a novice race watcher and noticed that there was an unbelievable amount of dirt on all of the riders and the horses coming back. And I don't know why it felt like there was more kickback and more the kickback was more significant this weekend. Did you notice that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I didn't. Well, I mean, I made that observation about Yoshida coming back with so much dirt that he looked gray. So in that sense, I noticed it. I didn't connect that it was any more than usual. I thought it was more the nature of the trip the horse got. But I'd say I don't know really where you're going with it, but I'd say it's an idea. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. I'd say it's an idea worthy of further exploration. What do you think it means?
I don't think it's a wagering clue or a wagering hint moving forward. I just wanted to know if for some reason I only noticed it because someone pointed it out, or if someone else had noticed kind of the same thing. I thought Restless Rider was good off of that kind of that long of a break. Not that long, but significant enough of a break. Not running at Saratoga prior. Ran well enough, and I think she's one that could definitely improve moving forward. But like I said, I never could have had Sippican Harbor, but good for Gary Contessa and those guys. I think he was joking about cutting his tie off or giving his tie away or something every time he won a race at Saratoga. So hopefully he gave someone his tie.
Well, the angle is, to me, and this is just something to remember, when these 2-year-olds go to 7 furlongs for the same time, I swear the difference between 5.5 and 7 for a 2-year-old on the dirt. It's almost to me like the difference between a mile and a half for an older horse. And you go back and you look and you see the form at 7 furlongs, and you see the only other horse in the race who'd run the distance or further, third place finisher Cassie's Dreamer at 68-1. I think there's something to this. I think that the distance in these races is an underrated handicapping factor, and there's some signal there, and that I should have had both those horses. Going forward next year, if the PPs look the same, I'd have those horses both as at least C's, just as a cheap include based on that angle, because it is such a different game. And that was my thought on it. I felt like I missed that, and it was something that I could have had I been paying a little bit more attention. Now, granted, it all would have blown up in the last race anyway, so it didn't actually cost me any money in that sense. But we'll get there. You would bet chasing yesterday back after that?
That's a trick. Well, probably. Well, yes. I mean, I would use back, right? I don't think she's never going to be value. And if she won by 3, that was her last opportunity to be value, if that makes any sense. She'll never be value again. She's always going to be overbet to a certain extent. So not necessarily, but I'll forgive the performance and still give her permission to be a good filly. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that, like, it was a hype machine and she's not very good. Her first race at Del Mar was good. She ran a fast figure, and I think she could improve back off of that. But no, I don't necessarily think she's going to be a bettable proposition moving forward, just because of the connections and the story.
Any other thoughts on the spin away before we move on to the other stakes action at Saratoga and Del Mar from the weekend?
Not really. No, there's nothing else really kind of got my attention there. I guess that Catherine the Great Horse wasn't very good, but that's off of the big race that she had at Saratoga. But that was pretty much it. Nothing much of note.
No to Madeline, I think, is worth a little shout out, having made the move to get to the lead after not a great start, and then to be right up there in red-coated fractions, only giving way in the lane, looking like maybe she didn't. It's hard to know if that was the effect of the start or she didn't see out the trip, but she's one I would definitely give another look to somewhere down the line, just to give you one more to take a look at. You had mentioned the Saranac, JK. Let's go back there. Good old Raging Bull gets the job done. 115 on the time form scale. What did you make of that effort?
This race just reminds me of what the Saratoga meet was for me. I talked about it at the beginning of when we did our preview shows. To me, the meet is about zigging and zagging Chad and Todd at the appropriate times. And I feel like every time I tried to zig Chad, I missed. And every time I tried to zag Chad, I missed. I just couldn't be right. I'd fade him and he'd win. I'd use him and he'd lose. And this is one of those situations where I just kept trying to beat Raging Bull and just couldn't get it done. Like I've tried to beat him twice in the meet. The first time you saved me with including him. And this time he won him. He's a nice horse. I don't think he's going to win any grade 1 races this year, but he's nice and good for him for the victory.
If he were to come on, he's not one who'd be inconceivable that he could come on for the run, but I agree. I think the times you wanted to have him were probably the last couple of starts, and I know Christina Helmer will be very happy when I tell her that her favorite horse, Raging Bull, got the job done at Saratoga. I like what you're saying about the Chad Brown situation, and this is not to and I want this to be crystal clear. This isn't knocking him, but it is amazing this meet to go back and look at my daily records and places where I took stands, and if there was no trainer named Chad Brown and no horse named Voodoo Song, how much more money I would have in my bank account than I do right now. So let me just ask you, we've had these therapy sessions on the last couple of podcasts, and this is my chance to get on the couch and appeal to you, Dr. Kinchin, though it sounds like you could just as easily be on the couch asking me. We're both patients here. What do we do with this guy going forward, this Chad Brown? What do we do?
Well, I think it's really hard because a lot of the things he does are not typical of other super trainers, which is like these really big gaps and these like perfectly timed races. So you don't ever know what you're going to get. So you get a horse first time US who's, and I'm not even sure that's happened. I'm just giving another Chad example. First time US or off of a really long layoff, and the horse is going to be 4-5 or 6-5. Like your handicapping foundation tells you you're supposed to try to beat the horse because there's so many reasons why he shouldn't run well, and then he runs well. And then there's the situations where you have Chad have a horse who's in form, who's a layover in the field, and then he gets some weird trip and gets beat. It's really very difficult to operate, and I wonder. And that would really be an interesting exercise for someone who played a lot of the meet. It would probably be really hard to do it. But to exclude your races in which Chad was involved and see what your ROI was, I would imagine it'd be very tough to do because you would think that Chad's involved in every pick 5 sequence, every pick 4 sequence. So it'd be tough to try to work that out. It's really hard. I mean, I haven't figured it out, and I don't know how to figure it out. I don't feel like you could be putting your best foot forward by using him blindly. I think that's a mistake. And you obviously, with 49, 46 wins, whatever it was, you can't fade him blindly either. So I have no idea.
I think I bet enough races individually that I can do that difficult exercise more than most people. And I'll say this, when I've opposed him on the dirt, the right spots to oppose him on the dirt, which I seem to be able to suss out okay, I've done pretty well. I'll be honest, though, with turf racing, whether I'm on or against, I should almost stay away when he's in the race. Just if I'm just looking at results. That's what my results are telling me. It's a little crazy. It's going to be a lot of great races I won't be betting. I think the smarter thing is, rather than say, I'm not going to bet, just don't make the big stands in those races. Maybe make the token wagers in those races. Try to get a little confidence back in those spots. I just feel like I'm defeated at this point when I decide I'm going to base a day around, say, I don't know, On the Moon Again, running well and saving with Santa Monica, and then here comes Lady Montdore to win the Glens Falls, and props to my buddy Justin I almost called him the wrong name again. I've done that before on the show. I apologize, my man. He picked this horse. We did a little head-to-head on Twitter, and he made a nice case, and he got the job done. And it was as simple as the name of his website, really, I guess, the case, loanspeed.com, running through super blue-coated fractions, making me wish for all the world that there was a rabbit in the race on the Brown team in addition to the 2 that went. But Lady Montdore gets the job done. What did you think of this race, JK? Only thing I did right, I did do one thing right. I could have easily bet more. At least I didn't make that mistake. 93 is the final buyer speed figure. And obviously it was a pay. I think you got to call it a pace-aided win.
Those happen at Saratoga from time to time. And, this is actually going to send me on a little, when I go 54 and 121 on the front end, that's going to be a hard horse to reel in, regardless of the situation. So that was a great observation. Unfortunately, I think what happens to a lot of us at Saratoga is we envision these loose on the lead types, and then there's the jockey's dilemma that comes into play, or they're really not that loose, or they still can't get the distance, and that can make it a little bit tough. So I've struggled at that. What used to be kind of a strength of mine is identifying that loose speed. I think I'm just a little bit more gun shy than I used to be. But good for Manny Franco, and I'll tell you what, we talked about it on the show. I made a meat bet where Manny Franco plus 4.5 versus Javier Castellano wins for the whole meet. I made it in Vegas, and right after I made it, I ran into John Panagal, which was a little bit awkward, but I told him, I owned it. I said, look, man, I believe in you. I just think that Manny's going to ride more than you are because you're going to ride just the big stuff. Manny's going to ride a lot of the other stuff and whatever. And it was neck and neck the entire time. And then Javier just exploded this weekend. And I lost by like 4 or 5 wins. So
wow,
Manny was doing his best in this race to help me out. But yeah. So anyways.
Well, what a job John Panagot did this meet between the stakes wins with the likes of Whitmore and, of course, Catholic boy. But look at the year-over-year numbers for Mr. Castellano. And as you point out, this wasn't really even this wasn't riding 8 a day, JK. This was very selective. He did own the weekends, though. I think I could have predicted to you going into the weekend that it was going to be a little tricky, just because it seemed like that's where he did most of his damage in the better quality races. But claps to those guys. Claps to Herrera Ortiz, of course, for winning the overall title, and Chad Brown breaking, I guess, his own record. And what do you end up with? 46 wins on the meet. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it was 46. With Javier, if to Johnny P's credit, if it's fair to say he revitalized the career of a 4-time Eclipse Award winning jockey who just took 1 year off from winning the Eclipse Award, Javier didn't have the best year last year. I mean, it wasn't the Javier years of past, and Johnny P brought him back, and so congratulations to both of those guys.
Yeah, and to Javier himself, of course, for just staying intrepid and getting the job done. These jockeys take so much abuse. It's nice when we can step back and get away from that negative mindset and point out some of the good things they do as well. Did you see any excuses for On the Moon Again or Santa Monica in this race, JK? And then I wanted to follow up with a question about the jockey's dilemma and the winner.
No, just the pace would be the excuse. I mean, I think if you like either one of them, you can bet them back. Obviously, On the Moon Again ran a little bit worse than I think you probably expected she was going to run. So you just give him another shot.
Yeah, she didn't really break, which is particularly bad off that kind of crawl. Looked loaded for a minute and then just found nothing. But that can be exaggerated sometimes by a pace scenario. And I was wondering with Lady Montdore, was this a case? I would have thought, if you told me what those fractions were, I would have said what I've heard you say many times on the show, almost too slow, inviting closers into the race. Why was it different in this instance?
She was 4-1 in there. So I think there's a little bit of quality. I think when you can get on the front end with a length lead and there's quality, then I think that there's an opportunity to carry on at 4-1. The problem is, I think so often we look for that loose on the lead horse to be 10 or 12-1. That's the one we really want. And those are the ones that invite the closers and still get beat anyways. I think it's a quality thing. That's why they're 12-1, and that's why they let us down. And I think that usually in those situations, when you have a horse that's 4-1, in that situation where you're like, well, she's 4-1, but she's got to get loose on the lead. She's got to go 54 to the half to win. I'm just going to pick one of these other ones who's a more likely winner. I think that's probably what happened there. She's a quality animal.
And she showed that the way as fast as she ran in the middle of the A other than, she didn't really finish up very fast, but I mean, in the A other than, but the race was over. But then you allow her to run that much slower early, and it's almost like she was able to store up that burst of speed and use it at the finish, and that's when she just buried them. And I think you're right. I think in terms of, you said quality, I'll say she had shown ability in the way she'd run in the previous race and was able to show it there with that tactical edge, and it was just too much for the others. And unfortunately for me, had this nice hit on Yoshida, and fortunately just plowed that back in and not too much more into the last race. But wagering disappointment for me, and that, JK, for me ended up being the final bet I made of the Saratoga meeting. I had enough at that point, and decided to take my ball and go home, get the little house on the east side packed up, and get out of there. Shall we talk about the Del Mar debutante for a minute? Bellafina wins with a 75 Beyer speed figure. Perhaps not the awesome effort I think all of us were expecting in this race. Did you see it? What did you make of it?
I saw it, and I'm trying to remember, and I'm going to look at my note. I think she was on her – she wouldn't switch lead last time, and she was just like it was almost kind of gross looking, like how awkward she was on her wrong lead coming for home this time too. I don't remember. I'll have to look back at two back, but it's going to be hard for me to bet any of these fillies out of this spot. Maybe with the 2-turn situation, I would give a horse like Mother or Brill another opportunity because I think they'll be a better price. So when they get back to Santa Anita, and I believe that's the Chandelier that they'll be running in, when they get back there, maybe I'll give one of those two fillies another shot at what'll be better prices. But I don't really want anything to do with Bellafina and that, moving forward based on the way she was finishing last time.
Any other thoughts from Del Mar? You wanted to you lead the discussion for a minute. You pick the next direction that we go in.
I'm trying to remember what races left. I flipped through like the charts on
the maybe we could talk about, or we could leap ahead to. That would be the other Saturday race. I don't know if you saw any of the Kentucky Downs stuff. We could talk about that, or we could move ahead to Sunday, where there was a bunch of things between Del Mar and Saratoga.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about the maybe, but I will say this: Vasilka is a really cool horse. They claimed the horse for what? Hollendorfer claimed the horse for 40. And then they went on that run of winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 or 6 in a row, and then stepped up in a graded stakes and wins at 4-1. That's a pretty good claiming job there by Hollendorfer for a horse that was in the hands of Canizzo, Ravelli, back on the East Coast, and man, that's pretty impressive. This is a pretty tough race with some horses that have competed in Grade 1 events, beat Cambodia, Fahan Mura, Sophie P, a bunch of Madam Stripes, a bunch of horses that we've picked in Grade 1 races, and this horse from a starter allowance gets the job done, wins by a length and a half, so very impressive.
Pretty impressive. Cambodia shows most of her form, runs well again at Del Mar, doesn't quite get the job done. Let's talk about some of the Sunday racing for a minute. Del Mar Derby, the winner was Ride a Comet with a 92 Beyer speed figure. Did you see that one?
I didn't see that one. I did miss that one. There was, who did I see on Sunday at Del Mar? I'm going blank on that. Maybe I was just looking at Saratoga. With these 3-day weekends, they all run together on me. I can't remember which ones were which.
It happens. And then the Prioress would have been the feature at Saratoga. Dream Tree 100 Beyer speed figure. I watched, but I was not even participating at that point, JK. Just busy getting life ready to head back. Where were you watching Sunday? What were you up to?
I was just hanging around in Austin. I don't know what we were doing. What were we doing Sunday? Maybe swimming pooling. Yeah. I tell you what, Dream Tree and Phoenix Thoroughbreds. She's been one that, as much as I root for Tom Luton, anything he's involved in, I've always tried to beat this filly. I keep trying to beat her. And I thought Mia Mischief was gonna turn the tables. Well, not so much turn the tables on Separation of Power because she wasn't there, but turn the tables in terms of her previous performance. I thought she ran really well that day. Thought she was going to come back in this spot and run well. And Dream Tree ran by her like she was tied to the 8th pole. And so with it's pretty interesting that what Baffert has here with Dream Tree and with Marley's Freedom. He's got two very legitimate horses that are going to be going into the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint.
All right, let's talk about the Grade 1 2-year-old action from Monday. We'll start on the East Coast with Mind Control, upset win at 10-1. Johnny V goes to the front, doesn't look back, ends up beating the favorite Mucho, a horse who many, including I, have been very excited about, and I'm still not unexcited about going forward. But Mind Control, the winner. What did you think of this performance for Gregory Sacco and Red Oak Stable?
He was really impressive. I thought that Nitrous had him measured at a point on the turn, and then I thought that Mucho had both of them measured at one point on the turn, and Mind Control just kept finding. Very interesting. I saw someone tweet. I don't remember who it was. I hate to take credit, so I wanted to at least say that much. But it seems that the Saratoga 2-year-old male program started. The key race you want to look back to is the 3rd at Delaware on July 5th, where Call Paul won the race and Mind Control ran second. So, look, I didn't really see an excuse for Mucho. I thought he got a great trip sitting right in behind those 2 horses, kind of setting it up for him, and he just never really found. And compared to the way that he ran previously, I guess there's an argument to be made that he's going to appreciate more ground and it's Mott and that he'll improve as he goes on. But I thought from what he did previously, I think that race was slightly disappointing.
Yeah, I think it has to be considered a little bit of a disappointment. I just wouldn't give up. Again, not a great start. I want to go back and look at the track a little bit on the day. I was not paying close attention, was driving for most of the day to see if that wasn't a factor potentially as well, since he was fairly wide throughout and underperformed. But I mean, I also think there's the idea of Mott with a target, and the target being the Breeders' Cup Juvenile potentially in this case, and thinking he was far enough along as it looked that he'd be able to just sort of pick this one up along the way. I certainly would not give up on Mucho, but I agree. It's not like, he was robbed or was the best horse or anything. It's not one of those situations. Did you see anything else in this one before we move it on to the West Coast?
No, I think we can move west.
All right, a horse that many of us were expecting big things from, Roadster, went to post as an odds-on favorite, but one of my least favorite common observations at the racetrack, not least favorite, I guess, just because it's so often cited without the burden of any data to back it up. The other Baffert, or the other Brown, in this case, the other Baffert, getting it done. Game winner for the uncommon combination of Mario Gutierrez and Mr. Silverhair B Squared. So what happened? Did B Squared call you up in the morning and say, JK, this Roadster, there's all this hype. No, man. Game winner. It's all about game winner. You got to bet him today.
No, he didn't call me. Or maybe he did. My phone was being funny yesterday. So, this was one of those shocking ones. Like I had that conversation with Mike after the maiden win that this is one of the best 2-year-olds he sat on, and I've heard random situations that this is Baffert's favorite 2-year-old and Roadster and there was just no excuse. He didn't miss the break. He wasn't wide. He didn't get dueled in submission. He just got beat fair and square, and it was never really even a question. I mean, he ran third. I don't know, Roe Waiton, I guess is how you say his name, the OXO stable mate of Instagram with Drayden Van Dyke and Jerry Hollendorfer was winging on the front end and was still able to hold Roadster off. I don't know what happened. I'd be interested to hear what Bob says. I know that he was on, he's usually on the 3rd hour of BIC, and he'll be on to talk about Game Winner. So I'm planning on listening to Steve Bick's show to pick up and hear what they say about what he says about what happened with Roadster. He's usually pretty candid when he talks about what happened. So we'll hear what happened there. But it definitely wasn't an excuse on the racetrack that I could see.
No, I was more negative on this performance than I was on the Mucho one for some of the reasons that you said. And how good does Team Instagram feel about having the B team get the job done against Roadster? Let's talk about the winner for a second, though, JK. Was Game Winner one who was on your radar before this race? Big late money came in, bet into 8-5. Somebody seemed to know something here, the way the betting went.
Yeah, I think there might have been a narrative. I mean, I didn't really like the horse. I thought that was he was back kind of quick. He ran on the 18th. He ran well that day, but he was on the outside, and that's kind of where you want to be at Del Mar in that previous race. And so, I mean, if Roadster wasn't in the race, there's an opportunity where you could look at Game Winner and say he deserves a look. But with Roadster there, I couldn't see past Roadster.
Came back at 93 on the Beyer speed figure scale. The time form numbers aren't in yet. Just to underline something you just said, JK, folks should definitely check out Steve Bick, not just the Baffert segment, but many of the segments all week long. You can listen live SiriusXM or the website stevebick.com, or you can do it as a podcast and pick and choose. And I love meeting podcast listeners out there in the world, and I meet plenty of them, but I might meet almost just as many who know me from the 1 hour a week, really 20 minutes a week. I have the pleasure of being on there with Steve Bick. So just something to underline that you pointed out. And yeah, Steve, he's an insider and has an opportunity to get a lot of these folks, including Baffert, to talk to him in more frank ways and more like really talking to horse player ways that are going to benefit you. And you'll find plenty of information to fill out your formulator notes when you become a regular listener of At the Races and Steve Bick. What else? There was another horse I know you wanted to talk about from Monday at Del Mar, JK. What's the story there?
Yeah, occasional guest and industry mogul, our friend Craig, our friend Craig Bernick. Man, that filly Summering that won the Del Mar Juvenile Filly Turf. She is impressive. We were there for her when she broke her maiden at Del Mar when it was on contest weekend. She wired the field for Tom Proctor first out, and that's one of those things that kind of, that's kind of that doing something they don't normally do. What helped, Matt Bernier. Oh man, I'm gonna forget the horse's name, and I felt good when I started to talk about it.
Why don't you just use the Visidero as an example?
I was going to use the Visidero, but Matt Bernier liked that John Sheriff's horse last year, 2 years ago, that ran well, and I can't remember the 2-year-old dirt horse. I'm going to go blank on it. But anyways, but Visidero is a great example with Buff Bradley having the horse run so well first out. It was a real indication of the talent. I think that Summering is an equal situation where Tom Proctor doesn't exactly crank them up, especially the ones that are going to run 2 turns on the turf. She broke like a rocket, went to the lead and wired the field and ran a really fast time. She was super impressive here yesterday as well, and I think that she should be a lot of fun to watch as she matures. She's a very important filly for that operation. Was a homebred out of a mare that was good to them as well. So looking forward to seeing her progress forward. I thought she was super impressive.
Looked very good, comes back on the Bayard speed figure scale with a 74, but one who has the potential to keep training on and could be interesting. We'll have to tangle with some European invaders, presumably down the line, but we'll certainly be keeping an eye on Summering and rooting for our friends at Glen Hill Farm. You find that horse yet?
No, I didn't. There's no way I'm going to remember. Actually, I will remember.
Look it up.
It's
easy. That horse, won Santa Anita, won the 2-year-old race at Santa Anita. It was 2 years ago in the fall. I just can't come up with the name.
2000. I'm going to look at the Derby. Ran in the Derby too. I'll just look at the Derby field. I will say this: congratulations to Drayden Van Dyke on winning the meet. That's really, really impressive. Of such a young guy to win. Didn't win Santa Anita Fall. He didn't win Los Al. He won the stinking Del Mar Summer meet, and that's pretty impressive.
And one, JK, I'll give you props for having highlighted early on as a rider to go ahead and watch at the meet. Hey, I heard you were in a head-to-head that was a bit of a pillow fight on Monday at Del Mar. Did you end up winning or losing that?
If you could look at me right now, I'm looking at my left arm as I'm flexing my bicep.
Yeah, what was your winning total? $13? I feel like there should be a rule when you win a head-to-head and you make less than your bankroll, you should just immediately donate that to either the Permanent Disabled Jockey Fund or Old Friends or the TAA, and just don't even take the blood. I'll let you take your steak back. Okay, you can take your steak back. Donate the rest of the money, Mr. $13.
Hey, I had at least $1 more than the other guy. That's all that matters. Gormley was the horse. Gormley is the horse. So,
and was I right? It wasn't last year. It was 2 years ago. Was I right about that?
Yeah, it was 2017. Yeah. Okay,
there you go. That makes me feel a little bit better. We've got 15 minutes left, JK. I honestly don't have a thing planned. This is what happens when you come back. Let's talk about ways for a horse player. We did this a little bit the other day, but let's go back to an important topic. Ways for the horse player to not feel super depressed on the day after the meets end. One thing that I always do is I do start looking forward to fall trips. In fact, I've already booked 2 trips today. I've booked my trip to Woodbine. There are some great airfares. I would recommend folks take a look if you're thinking of coming up for the Woodbine Mile contest, or even just for the weekend. There's good stakes races on Saturday and those 2 good 2-year-old races on Sunday. Porter Airlines is actually having a pretty cool sale right now. And I know it's farther away from Woodbine than Pearson, the big airport, but that city airport, it's just so darn easy. You can basically just, they check you out and everything, but there's not going to be a big customs line. It's like a real commuter airport, super efficient. I booked my way into there. It's super cheap, and that makes me feel good thinking about that exciting racing trip that's just 2 weeks away. I'm also going to be making my plans to get to Keeneland, Equestricon, and the Breeders' Cup. Haven't booked that yet, but that's on my list to do this afternoon. The run up to the Breeders' Cup, that's always something that can make a horse player feel better. And then for me this year, I'm actually not going to be around at Keeneland for Fall Stars weekend. Friends in the UK at the races, we talked about the Steve Bick at the races also a TV station in the UK, and my friends there have asked me to come on and be a guest for those nights on at the races stateside. So I'm in the process of booking my travel to go to London. So that's how that's my solve. Saratoga's over, but I still have these 3 fun trips coming up, and I may go 4 for 4 looking at a Del Mar Fall weekend as well. What advice do you have for players to do something other than want to cry on a day like today, JK, when both the summer meets have concluded?
I think one of the things that I always find, I don't want to call it fun, but important to do at this time of the year is to do some reflecting. Find a little project. Analyze some of your play from Del Mar and Saratoga, whether it's figure out where you made mistakes in turf races, or what you could have done differently in your pick 4 structures, or whatever it is. Find out what bet of yours was the most rewarding, and then understand why it was the most rewarding. And if it's the exacta, try to take some time and look back and see if what happens if you would have played the try in that situation. Would you have done just as well? And really kind of take some time to learn more about your time, your play. It's so bell to bell, this game. It feels like racing always happens. People always ask me that. Is it racing season? It's always racing season.
That's about right.
So when you have an opportunity to take some time to work on some other projects, I think it's always important to do so. Or find another handicapping product that you're not using and try it out. Whether it's, if you haven't tried Timeform US, give it a shot. There's a lot of different ways you can find this time and make it useful. But before you know it, it's going to pick back up. I mean, Belmont starts back in 3 days? So you'll have Belmont back in no time. And one of the cool. No, but it's still fun though. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of think about to get excited about something. Get excited about this. The 2-year-olds are going to be stretching out to the 1-turn mile races at Belmont. Ton of fun. The 5.5 turf sprint horses that found that distance to be too sharp will now have an opportunity to run at 6 and 7. All the horses on the main track that were stuck between 7 furlongs and 1 mile and an 1/8 now have an opportunity to run at 1 mile and a 1/16 on the main track. In between, where the 1 mile and 1/8 might be too far, the 7 furlongs might be too sharp. You also have the opportunity to get a lot of the horses that weren't able to run because of the rain and the off the turf situations. You'll also get the opportunity to bet the horses that were jogged around there on the off track. They got to get some work to now get back onto the surface that they're looking for. There's a lot of exciting handicapping opportunities ahead of you. There's nothing to be sad about.
All right. I like your optimism. I don't know if I fully buy it, but I like your optimism. And I will say this time of year, I guess we get it a little more having small children where it's literally the first day of school. I guess you start early in Texas or whatever, but for a lot of us around the country, today is the first day of school. And I try to, use this. I'm not like a big New Year's resolution guy, but I do, for purposes of the podcast or a column, I will trot those out. But in my own real life, I do try to have this sort of first day of school. Okay, time to atone for the excesses of summer. Get back to a little more serious work. And sort of like you were saying about picking up a project, it's a good time. It's a good time to add things. It's a good time to reflect. It's a good time to put the head down and grind and get stuff done. So I definitely take that point as well. What does your fall travel schedule look like? Or do you have a contest circled, or will we next see you at the Breeders' Cup?
This will be fun. Let's do this. We haven't even talked about it. I am home this weekend. I am out of town on the 15th, so I won't be able to make it to Woodbine. I'm going to be at a beach somewhere.
Boo.
Home on the 22nd weekend. My life is all about the Saturdays, right? So the 29th, I'm home. I'll be here in Austin as well, but I'm going to try to play the Santa Anita contest if I can online. What else after that? October? Huh?
Home 3 out of 4 weekends. I don't know when I've ever heard that the case for you in the 5 years I've known you.
I know. October 6th, Santa Anita has their big on-track contest. I'd like to play in that, but I have to look at a calendar. The 13th, I think is that Keeneland's contest?
I don't know because I'm not going to make
it. It is.
Yes, it is. 13th.
It is.
13th. Absolutely, it is.
So I'll definitely be there for that. Actually, I think October 6th, I won't be able to go to Santa Anita. I think it's our friend Blake Jesse's wedding.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's pretty much it. And then it's EquestriaCon and Breeders' Cup right there, right after that. So,
what are you doing?
This is going to be
We should talk a little EquestriaCon because I think the tickets are on sale. I think it's equestriacon.com. If not, you can Google EquestriaCon. I'm sure we'll have Dan Torchman on in short order to talk about ways to get involved. I'm hosting a couple of panels. Really excited about that. What are you involved in? Are you working with me or are you doing your own thing?
I'm Googling as we speak. I am doing tournament handicapping workshop, Mythical versus Live Money with – who is on it with me? Let's see. Here we go. Rich Nielsen, myself, Scott Carson, and possibly Paul Matisse. He's pending as of the last email I saw. Moderated by NBC's Matt Bernier.
TV's Bernier.
He was on NBC this week, and he had the stones to pick the longest shot on the board in the Woodward.
It was the kind of race where it made sense. He was on with me at our seminar at Saratoga beforehand and made a compelling case at 100-1 for Imperative. Didn't work out, but you don't have to be right very often when you're betting 100-1 shots. Speaking of young people doing good things at Saratoga this weekend, though, JK, did you see that the low roller on Sunday was won by none other than 22-year-old Grant Lagrange?
I did see that on Twitter. I think maybe you were tweeting at him. Did you put the piece up, or is that you're in the process?
No, I haven't interviewed him yet. He had his travel day. I had my travel day, and we'll catch up. We'll catch up later in the week. The soonest that'll be going up there. Maybe tomorrow if I catch him tomorrow morning.
What's the prize for that?
I think he won. I don't know what it was between bankroll and prize money, but he ended up starting with $40 and walking with $2,300. So. Not too bad, is it, Chief?
Nothing wrong with that. I tell you, I've played the low roller like 5 times. I always play it like, oh, this is going to be an easy day at the track. It's Sunday. It's Monday. Let's just hang out, play the low roller. And I'm awful every time I'm playing it.
It's a good contest. It's a lot of fun. Frank Scatoni and I cut our teeth in tournaments playing in the Santa Anita one back in the day, time after time. Great, great fun. And just good to see Grant, who has gotten work in racing, working for racing in Louisiana, making a lot of great connections down there, working at the fairgrounds, and looking to make a name for himself in the tournament world. He was super pumped. I saw his name in a lot of the qualifiers for the World Horse Players Tour, and wasn't able to qualify for that event, but is really pumped, JK, when there's more news about that, which unfortunately we don't have any right now. A lot of folks have been asking, hey, it's been a while. What's going on with that? it's a process. It's a slow process to dealing with both the worlds of racing and TV. More news when you have it. If you want information about the Horse Players Tour, best way to do it, follow me on Twitter @LoomsBoldly, JK @UTBigHair. Follow the @Horseplayer Tour handle as well, and listen to this show when there is news, and there will be lots of nibbles, just trying to put the pieces of a complicated puzzle together. We will be talking about it probably here before anywhere else. But Grant has expressed some serious interest in that, and it's been fun. It's been fun to see these young players making names for themselves, whether it's Justin Mustari on the show or Grant up at Saratoga, and I definitely look forward to writing about him. I encourage folks to check out some of the stuff I wrote, especially late in the meet. I feel like as wonky as my betting was, I feel like the writing was pretty darn good throughout the meet. Very proud of the piece I wrote about Harvey Pack and the work we did together. If we had more time, we're actually now running out of time. If we'd had more time, I was going to tail from the track, just read my story of my whole go around with Harvey since when I first met him, that I wrote up on August 29th. Easiest way to find it is probably just to go to tournaments.drf.com and go to the tournament news drop down. You can find that. I was also very happy to immortalize the Degenerate Doubleheader, our annual thing that we do. Brian Nato and I started it. We often supplement it with a varied cast of characters, including some of the boys from L.A., Lower Albany, many of whom are actually from Schenectady, including the Sultan of Schenectady, Chris Pipido. But anyway, Degenerate Doubleheader, very proud of that article. Feel free on a dull day, go back through the ones that I feel like the profile ones and the strategy ones are pretty evergreen, less interesting probably in weeks after to go ahead and read previews and reviews of specific tournaments. But I still think there's plenty of good content on there for folks to check out. JK, any closing thoughts on this saddest Tuesday of the year?
No, I'm good. I was about to jump on top of my political soapbox, but decided to leave it alone.
Yeah, we don't need that. I'd rather you talk about your basement troll friends than go political on me at this stage. But we do have 2 minutes if you have anything else to say on that topic.
No. There's nothing else to say. I think we said it last week that let's just all hug each other and enjoy this fun sport that's brought us all together, and respect each other's opinions and go from there.
Some of those guys, I'm worried I'm going to get a communicable disease if I hug, so I'll pass on the hug. But maybe a fist bump with a glove. No reaction from JK on that one. All right. That is all the time we have on this edition of the DRF Players Podcast. I want to thank Jonathan Kinchin. I want to thank producer AJ. He's been working hard, working overtime lately to make the show enjoyable and hopefully getting us back into some decent sound quality, which it seems where we've been the last couple of shows. Most of all, I want to thank all of you for listening. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter with questions, with comments. You can also use the hashtag DRFPod, just hashtag DRFPod with your comment. Tag us as well, then I'll know it's there, but then it's easier to just go back and look at the hashtag when it comes time to talk about this stuff on the show. Hopefully we'll be getting a bunch of listener participation going forward. That's all I got. We will be back on Friday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.